I was being brought to set in a wheelchair. Like, I couldn't walk that far. So I had to tell everybody because I needed help. You know, I needed someone to help me stand, and I needed someone to help. I needed someone to help me to get there.
There are moments in Hollywood that cut through all the noise, all the manufactured drama, the carefully managed press releases, the publicist-approved sound bites, and deliver something that feels startlingly, almost uncomfortably real. What Christina Applegate said about Ed O'Neill following their recent reunion was one of those moments. It was not a carefully prepared statement. It was not a promotional interview designed to sell something. It was a woman who has been through extraordinary pain, speaking from a place of deep honesty about a man who changed the course of her life. And once she started talking, she could not stop. The entertainment world has heard plenty of behind-the-scenes stories about Married with Children over the years. The show ran for 11 seasons, from 1987 to 1997, and left behind a cultural footprint that most television series never come close to matching. People remember Al Bundy's hand stuffed down his waistband. They remember the outrageous storylines, the boundary-pushing humor, the characters who were deeply flawed and completely lovable all at once. But what most people never understood was what was actually happening between those four walls when the cameras were not rolling. Christina Applegate just changed that. Completely. To understand why her revelations landed with such force, you have to understand who Christina Applegate was when she first walked onto that set. She was 15 years old. 15. In 1987, she stepped into the role of Kelly Bundy, a character written as a provocative teenage sex symbol on one of the most controversial shows network television had ever attempted to broadcast. Think about that combination for a moment. A 15-year-old girl playing that particular character on that particular show in that particular era. The potential for things to go very wrong was enormous. The fact that things went as right as they did is almost entirely down to one man. Ed O'Neill was already a seasoned performer when Married with Children began. He understood the machinery of Hollywood in ways that a teenager from the San Fernando Valley simply could not. He had navigated the industry's pressures, its egos, its casual cruelties. And when he looked across that set and saw this young girl trying to find her footing in one of the most unforgiving entertainment environments imaginable, something in him decided to act. Not because anyone asked him to, not because there was anything in his contract that required it, but because Ed O'Neill, beneath the gruff exterior of Al Bundy, is apparently a genuinely decent human being. What Christina exposed after their reunion goes far beyond the usual warmth that former castmates express about each other in anniversary interviews. She described a dynamic that was operating on a completely different level than most people realized. Ed, she revealed, functioned as something closer to a guardian on that set. He was watching. He was paying attention. When conversations around Christina started drifting in directions that were inappropriate for a teenager, Ed shut them down. Not aggressively, not in a way that made scenes or created tension, but firmly and clearly enough that everyone understood where the line was. He established a standard of how Christina was to be treated, and he enforced it through sheer force of presence and reputation. The specific story that has struck people hardest involves the way Ed handled the adult nature of the show's content relative to Christina's age. Married with Children was deliberately, almost gleefully provocative. The jokes were suggestive. The situations were adult. The character of Kelly Bundy was written in ways that invited a certain kind of attention from audiences. Ed understood that there was a significant difference between what was happening on screen and what needed to happen off screen. The character could be whatever the writers needed her to be. The actual 15-year-old girl playing that character needed to be protected. Ed drew that distinction clearly and never let anyone blur it. Christina has spoken about how Ed would physically position himself near her during difficult scenes, how he would step between her and certain conversations, how there was never a moment on that set where she felt exposed or vulnerable in ways that went beyond the professional demands of the job. For a girl that age, working in that environment, that kind of quiet protection was not a small thing. It was foundational. It shaped her entire experience of what it means to work in this industry, what standards are acceptable, what treatment is normal. Ed O'Neill essentially calibrated her professional compass before she even knew she needed one. But what Christina exposed after the reunion was not just about protection. It was about education. Ed was teaching her constantly, often without her fully realizing it at the time. The improvisation sessions that he initiated, throwing her unexpected line changes mid-scene, altering his delivery to force her to adapt in real time, were not random creative experiments. They were deliberate lessons in the craft of performance. He was building her skills with the patience and intention of a master teacher, investing in her future as an actress, even as they were both focused on making the show work in the present. Christina has said that techniques she still uses today, decades later, trace directly back to things Ed showed her on that set. There was also something he taught her that had nothing to do with acting. When a show faced its most serious existential crisis, the 1989 advertiser boycott that threatened to cancel Married with Children entirely, Ed demonstrated something that Christina has described as one of the most important lessons of her life. She was 17 years old and terrified. This show was everything to her. The idea that it could simply be taken away because a group of people had decided to be offended was overwhelming. Ed gathered the younger cast members and told them something that she has never forgotten. He told them that what they had already created together had value regardless of what happened next. That the work was real, but they should be proud. That fear was understandable, but it could not be allowed to make decisions for them. Then he went further. He contacted the press himself. He gave interviews defending the show, but more specifically, he made sure that in every public conversation about the controversy, there was a voice speaking up for the younger people involved in the production. He refused to let Christina and David Faustino become collateral damage in what was essentially a culture war being fought over their heads. He placed himself as a shield between them and the storm. As history records, the boycott spectacularly backfired. The controversy made people curious, ratings surged, and the show became more popular than it had ever been. But Christina has said, clearly and with great emotion, that what she remembers from that period is not the victory. It is Ed standing beside her while everything felt like it was falling apart. The reunion that preceded her most recent revelations brought all of this flooding back to the surface. When a Married with Children cast comes together, something genuinely remarkable happens. The chemistry between them is not the performed warmth of people who once worked together and have carefully maintained cordial relations. It is something more lived in, more textured, more honest than that. These are people who spent 11 years together, who watched each other change and grow, who navigated extraordinary circumstances side by side. And at the center of all of it, always, is the relationship between Christina and Ed. What Christina exposed specifically at the reunion, the things she said that shocked even people who thought they knew this story, concerned the depth of Ed's involvement in her life after the show ended. Married with Children concluded in 1997 without ceremony or closure. One day, they were making television history together. The next day, it was over. For an actress who had spent her entire formative adolescence and young adulthood on that set, the ending left a void that she has been honest about struggling to fill. But what she revealed is that Ed never actually left. He called. He checked in. When she faced professional challenges, he was available. When she faced personal ones, he was there. The relationship that had been forged on that soundstage had become something genuinely permanent. When Christina's multiple sclerosis diagnosis became public in August 2021, Ed's response confirmed everything she had been saying about him for years. He did not send a brief message and leave it at that. He made contact in a way that communicated clearly and unambiguously that she was not facing this alone. Christina has been careful about the precise details she shares regarding that period. It is intensely private, and she has every right to protect it. But she has made clear that among all the outpourings of support she received, Ed's response was the one that meant the most. Because it came from someone who had been watching out for her for over 30 years. Because it came from someone who had been through everything with her. Because it came from someone who had earned the right to stand in that position in her life. Living with MS has required Christina to completely rebuild her relationship with her own body and her own professional identity. She uses a cane now. She deals with cognitive fog that makes certain kinds of work extremely difficult. She has had to mourn the version of herself that existed before the diagnosis, which she has described as one of the hardest ongoing emotional experiences of her life. The physical challenges are significant and real, and they are not going away. But what she has also revealed is that the quality of the relationships around her has become even more important in this context. When your body is unpredictable, when your future is uncertain, the people who show up consistently become everything. Ed O'Neill has shown up consistently. That is the core of what Christina exposed. Not scandal, not controversy, not the kind of revelation that makes headlines, because it involves wrongdoing or betrayal. What she exposed is something much rarer and in many ways more surprising given the industry being discussed. She exposed genuine, sustained, decades-long loyalty. She exposed the kind of care that does not make calculations about what it costs or what it returns. She exposed the fact that the relationship audiences watched between Al and Kelly Bundy on screen was drawing on something real that existed between the actual people playing those characters. The Hollywood Walk of Fame ceremony in November 2022 gave the public its first sustained look at Christina navigating the world post-diagnosis in a high-profile public setting. She arrived with her cane. Her movements were slower, but she was absolutely, defiantly present. The speech she delivered that day was remarkable for its honesty. She talked about fear and uncertainty in ways that public figures almost never do at celebratory events. And when she talked about the people who had shaped her, the people who had been there for her, Ed O'Neill's name was present in the subtext of every word, even when she was not saying it directly. The formation she was describing, being looked after by someone who did not have to look after her, being protected when she was vulnerable, being taught when she was young, and standing by while she succeeded, that formation came from him. The Emmy moment in January 2023 has become one of those cultural touchstones that gets referenced repeatedly because it captured something genuinely moving. When Christina walked onto that stage and the entire room rose to its feet without any coordination or cue, it was Hollywood, an industry not known for its sincerity, doing something unrehearsed and honest. The standing ovation lasted close to a full minute. Christina stood there, visibly working through the emotion of it, and then did exactly what anyone who knows her work would expect. She made a joke. She cracked about the noise rattling her brain. The audience laughed through tears, and somehow that single moment contained everything essential about who she is as a performer and as a person. Ed was among those who reached out to her that night. The specifics of what passed between them remain private, as they should. But Christina has spoken about how that evening crystallized something for her, about what endures, about what actually matters in a career and a life, about which relationships have proven themselves over time. 37 years after she first met Ed O'Neill on the set of Married with Children, the relationship was still the same relationship it had always been. He was still looking out for her. She was still receiving that care and being honest about how much it meant. The podcast she launched with Jamie Lynn Sigler, called Messy, has given Christina a format that accommodates her current reality while keeping her connected to audiences and to the larger conversation about living with chronic illness. It has also given her a space to be unfiltered in ways that more formal media appearances do not always allow. And it is in that unfiltered space that some of her most honest reflections about Ed and about the entire Married with Children chapter of her life have emerged. She is not performing gratitude. She is describing a lived reality in real time. As for what comes next for the cast, the reunion question that fans have been asking for decades, what Christina has exposed makes clear that any answer to that question begins and ends with her. The cast is unanimous on this point. Ed has stated it plainly. Katie Sagal has echoed it. David Faustino has said the same. There is no version of a Married with Children reunion that any of them are interested in participating in that does not include Christina Applegate. This is not a negotiating position. It is not a publicity strategy. It is a reflection of the actual values that have governed this group of people for nearly 4 decades. They are a family. Families do not leave members behind. What Christina Applegate has ultimately exposed about Ed O'Neill is not what the headline might suggest to someone unfamiliar with their story. There is no scandal here. There is no betrayal, no controversy, no dark secret finally brought to light. What she exposed is something that the entertainment industry rarely produces and even more rarely sustains. A relationship of genuine depth and genuine decency between two people who met under extraordinary circumstances and chose, over and over again, across decades and hardships and changes neither of them could have predicted, to remain in each other's lives as something real. She was 15 when she met him. She is in her 50s now, facing challenges that would have been unimaginable to that teenager standing nervously on a television set for the first time. And Ed O'Neill is still there, still watching, still the person she described to the world after their reunion with a clarity and an emotion that made it impossible to doubt a single word of it. Some bonds are simply built to last. And in a world that treats most things as temporary, that turns out to be the most remarkable revelation of all.